explanation if the answer is one of the following. So if you want it to always, you have to write something in the explanation box every time the answer is yes, it'll generate an error if the user doesn't do that. You can also add additional information on a question, and clicking this View button will show you what I mean. So if you had a question for your school that is based around a specific institutional policy that you want them to answer, they can get additional information from this panel. It basically says, what is this question about? And it also allows you a place to provide some description and explanation on the question. So if you want to refer them to a website at your school, or if you want to write a brief blurb about what this question is for and why you need the answer to it, that's a place where you can add that information when you add the question to KC. One of the things that's coming with future iterations of KC is a more robust question functionality. Right now, with the proposal in particular, they're basically yes, no, NA questions, and they can require additional information based on the answer there. But you'll still see the same list of questions regardless of what your proposal scenario is. There isn't right now any branching logic that says, okay, this is an NSF proposal, so don't put in any of the NIH grants.gov questions. That is coming in a later release. And it will be the first iteration of that kind of questionnaire with branching logic will be available in our IRB module, which will be released later this year. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the last three panels before we move into the budget. The permissions page, we showed you that a little bit about the view and edit rights on a document. This is where you would add people in order to be able to do those kinds of things. Right now, I'm the only person listed on the proposal, but I can add additional people with different rights on the proposal, and I'll go ahead and do that now. I'll go ahead and pick a person and return that person to the page, and then select what their role is. So there are a few options here, and I want to make it clear that permissions is not the same thing as workflow. This is not listing the people who would approve the document for the institution, whatever your workflow routing structure looks like. This is just limited to the people who would work on the proposal or be able to see certain parts of the proposal while it's in process. So right now I'm going to go ahead and add this person as a narrative writer. What that means is that they can add and replace files in the proposal and the abstracts and attachments page, but they have edit access to the rest of the proposal. I mean, non-edit access to the rest of the proposal. So they can't change anything on any of the other tabs. They can only look at but can't modify the budget. They can really only work on the narrative piece. And if you look at the other roles, the same goes for the budget creator. They would only be able to work on the budget and would only have read access to the rest of the proposal. There's also a viewer role that allows someone to just have read-only access to the entire proposal. They can look at it, but they can't make any modifications to it. And these other two we'll ignore because they're added for testing. One of the things you can do in setting up KC at your institution is define who has permissions for a unit in advance so that you don't have to add you don't have to add someone every time you create a proposal. You don't have to add the same 5 people who will be working on the proposal every time. You can have basically a default selection. So if I'm in the chemistry department and these 3 people are the ones who work on proposals every time, then that would come in there, and then a person could ad hoc add additional permissions as appropriate for a specific proposal. Proposal actions is one of the final tabs in proposal. This is where you can actually see what's going to happen in workflow, who needs to approve the proposal and what the order is. It's also where you can turn on and off the data validation, which basically shows you the errors that you might have on the proposal. I'll go ahead and turn it on now so that you can see I've got a few errors in my budget, and the attachment statuses have to be set to complete. And I've got a few errors on the grants.gov forms I have that they need to be filled out in order for this to be validated properly for grants.gov submission. One of the things that the data validation does is that the default is to off, so that you're not constantly getting the error messages, basically until the end. You can turn it on and off at any point during the proposal. You can go back and forth. But what it does do is, even if you've left it off the whole time, is it forces validation upon routing. So if I were to submit this into routing so that it can be routed by the people in my institution, it's going to automatically run validation regardless of what I've done on this panel. Another thing to note about the errors is that errors are hard stops. So errors are something that will prevent this being submitted into routing. Warnings are not. Warnings are basically soft errors that you may want to correct, but they won't prevent you submitting it into routing or submitting via grants.gov. One of the other things that the error panels do is provide you a place to fix where the error occurs. So if I click on one of these fix links, and I'll go ahead and do this on a page we've already worked on, it'll take me right back to the page where I have to fix the item. So I can go in. It shows me the error and a little flag as to where my error is. I can change that and save it. Once I save it, it'll take me back to the validation panel. That error will be gone, but then the rest in the list will still be on it. And that's part of the reason a lot of people may not turn on validation right away, because every time you save it, it'll bring you back to this page to remind you of what you need to fix next. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off so that we don't run into it again while I move along. Proposal hierarchy is some new functionality with proposal in the upcoming release. And this allows you to create more than one proposal and link it together into a single aggregate proposal. This can be particularly useful for proposals that have separate budgets around tasks. So if you've got a big collaborative proposal with a bunch of different departments on your campus, they'll each have their own budget or series of budgets related to the task work they'll perform. They can each create a proposal, and then we can create a hierarchy to link them all together and generate one aggregate proposal that's made up of all of those proposals. One of the nice things about that is that routing can then be independent if it needs to be. So if you have 5 different departments with 5 different sets of routing for those departments, they can each route their little pieces, and then it can get rolled up into one big proposal. It can be particularly useful for things like NIH program projects that have a lot of different moving pieces to them that are taken care of in different areas on campus. The print panel allows you to generate another place to generate the PDF forms, both the grants.gov forms you've added, and some additional generic forms. We provide some style sheets for the old NSF budgets if you want it in that format, and even some generic formats that just give you a nice clean hard copy of the budget if you need to email it or send it hard copy to someone else. It's a way of generating that from the work you've already done. It also gives you a place to do current and pending supports for a particular PI. You'll see the message here that we don't have it available because an institutional proposal doesn't exist for this current proposal. What that means is this proposal isn't finished, so it's not able to be added to a current pending report yet. Once the proposal is done and is completely routed through institutional approvals, it generates what's called an institutional proposal. That's basically the static record of the proposal submission for reporting purposes and also for award purposes. A proposal development, someone can start one and never finish it ever, or they could start one and make copies of it again and again and again, and it ends up in different iterations of a proposal, some of which will be finished and submitted, some of which will be not. The institutional proposal is created only when something is completely submitted and completely approved, so that we know that was a proposal that was submitted and that was a proposal that was completely approved and can show up as a pending proposal for an individual investigator. Once we have institutional proposals generated, you can generate a current pending support form based on all the pending institutional proposals and the awards that person will have. Basically sets it up as a lookup so that they can download the information in like a text file, and they can put it in Word and modify it so that they actually can get that information directly from the system versus keeping an outside list of their pending proposals and their current awards. With Copy to New Document, you can create an entirely new copy of the proposal that you're working on and make a few changes to it while you do so. What it allows you to do, this is the only place you can change the lead unit once you've started. So back on this proposal page, lead unit, or the unit that's responsible for administering the award, should there be one, is basically set once you save the document for the first time. And once you've done that, you can't actually change the lead unit unless you make an entire copy of the proposal and change the lead unit at this point. So the way that would work is I can make a copy of this proposal. I can opt to include all of the budget versions. Right now I don't have a final budget version created in this proposal, but I could theoretically